At a film festival in Cannes, a famous director clinked his glass. Here, even the most loyal hearts wander. I thought it was just talk, until I saw him in the hotel bar, whispering into a starlet's ear. When I confronted him, he smiled. It's just a Hollywood thing. I nodded, handing him a letter. Then you won't mind if I take the role you were saving for her. His smile dropped as he read the contract. Cannes. The name alone drips with exclusivity, wealth, and the kind of excess that normal people only see in tabloids. It was my first time here, and I should have been overwhelmed by the sheer spectacle of it all. The flashing lights, the impossible beauty, the way the entire town seemed to pulse with barely contained debauchery. But I wasn't. Not really. I had other things on my mind. I was here because of him. He was a director. Not just any director, the kind whose name was whispered in hushed, reverent tones in Hollywood circles. The kind who could turn a no-name actress into an Oscar winner. The kind who knew exactly what to say to make people feel like they owed him their careers. I thought I knew him. I thought I was different. I thought I was safe. The night it all started, I was at an after-party in one of those massive villas overlooking the French Riviera. The air smelled like salt and expensive perfume, and everything felt slightly out of focus, the way it does when too much money is being thrown around in too little time. He was standing near the balcony, holding a glass of champagne like he was posing for a magazine cover. Tall, charming, confident in a way that made even the most jaded industry people lean in when he spoke. His voice carried just enough arrogance to make him seem untouchable, but not enough to push people away. Here, even the most loyal hearts wander, he said, clinking his glass against an executive's. People laughed. I rolled my eyes. It was exactly the kind of thing men like him said to sound wise and world-weary. I didn't take it seriously. I should have. A few hours later, I found him at the hotel bar. I wasn't looking for him. I had left the party early, tired of pretending to care about people who wouldn't remember my name in the morning. But when I walked into the dimly lit bar, there he was, sitting in a booth in the corner. His hand rested lightly on the thigh of a girl half his age. I froze. She was laughing. Not just polite, industry laughter, real laughter, the kind that comes from being genuinely charmed. He was leaning in, whispering something against her ear, his fingers tracing small circles on the fabric of her dress. I felt something crack in my chest. He saw me before I could turn away. He didn't move his hand. Didn't look guilty. Didn't even have the decency to flinch. Instead, he smiled, slow and lazy, like I had just walked in on something completely normal. It's just a Hollywood thing, he said, like that explained everything. I don't know what I expected. An apology? An excuse? A reaction? I took a step forward, heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear myself speak. Then you won't mind if I take the role you were saving for her. The smile dropped. For the first time that night, I saw something flicker across his face, something sharp, something that looked an awful lot like fear. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. A contract. His contract. The one he had promised to give her. I placed it on the table in front of him. He didn't touch it. I met his eyes. Held them. And then, in the thick silence of that overpriced hotel bar, I said the words that would change everything. He didn't touch the contract. Didn't even look at it. Instead, he leaned back in the booth, studying me like I was some kind of unpredictable animal that had suddenly bared its teeth. The starlet, blonde, delicate, the kind of woman men like him collect, glanced between us, confused. She was young. Probably didn't even know what was happening yet. But he did. And that was enough. I slid into the booth across from him, keeping my voice calm. You said it yourself, I murmured, tapping the paper. Loyal hearts wander. His jaw tightened. You don't want to play this game with me? Sure I do. The starlet shifted uncomfortably. She looked at him for some kind of cue, but he was too busy staring at me. The mask he wore so well, charming, untouchable, was starting to slip. I smiled. A slow, mean smile. Because I had him. He could either take the contract and give me the role, the one meant for her, or he could fight me. But fighting me meant admitting he had made a mistake. And men like him? They don't make mistakes. He exhaled through his nose. Picked up the paper. His fingers curled around it, knuckles turning white. Then, without breaking eye contact, he tore it in half. Ripped the pages once. Then twice. Kept tearing until the pieces were nothing but scraps on the table between us. The starlet gasped. She still didn't know what was happening, but the tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. I didn't blink. I should have been scared. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out another copy. His nostrils flared. I placed it gently on the table, smoothing out the edges. You always taught me to have a backup plan. For a long second, he didn't move. Then he laughed. Not a real laugh. Not the kind that meant he found this funny. It was the kind of laugh that sounded like metal scraping against metal, sharp, dangerous. You think you've won? He said, voice low. I tilted my head. Haven't I? His fingers drummed once, twice, against the table. Then he stood. Not fast, not aggressive, just calculated. He smoothed down his suit, adjusted his cuffs. The starlet scrambled to her feet beside him, still looking confused, still waiting for some kind of explanation. He didn't give her one. Instead, he turned to me. Leaned in close. Close enough that only I could hear him when he whispered. You have no idea what you just started. Then he walked away. Left the girl. Left the contract. Left me sitting in a bar that suddenly felt too quiet. I should have felt victorious. Instead, my stomach twisted. Because he was right. I had no idea what I had just started. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, the news had already changed. The role I had fought for? Gone. Studio politics. Scheduling conflicts. Creative differences. Bullshit. This wasn't coincidence. It was him. And that was just the first move. I was getting coffee at a cafe near the festival when I got the call. A journalist. One of the good ones. The kind who actually cared about the truth. I don't know what you did, she said, voice rushed. But your name is about to be all over the trades. My heart slammed against my ribs. I stepped out onto the street, away from the crowd. What are you talking about? There was a pause. Then she sighed. Someone's feeding stories about you. Bad ones? I swallowed hard. Like what? Another pause. Then, that you slept your way into your last role. That you've been blacklisted from 3 different sets. That you're a nightmare to work with. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. He didn't just want to win. He wanted to make sure I lost. I can kill the story, the journalist said. For now. But if you have anything, that proves he's behind this, I need it. Fast. I had plenty. But the truth wouldn't be enough. Not in this town. Not against him. I needed something bigger. And I knew exactly where to get it. I found the starlet by the pool. She was alone now, stretched out on a lounge chair, oversized sunglasses covering most of her face. But she wasn't relaxing. She was thinking. Good. I sat beside her. He left you, didn't he? She stiffened. Turned her head slightly. Didn't speak. I leaned in. Let me guess, he promised you the role? Told you were perfect for it? A pause. Then, quietly. Yes. I nodded. He's done it before. He'll do it again. She exhaled slowly. Why are you telling me this? I smiled. Because I need your help. Her lips pressed together. And what do I get out of it? I pulled out my phone and opened my email. A draft sat there, ready to send. Her name. Her headshot. Attached to a better role. Think of it as a trade. I held up the phone. You help me. I help you. For the first time since I sat down, she took off her sunglasses. Her eyes met mine. And then, slowly, she nodded. That night, I sent the journalist the first piece of what she needed. Not enough to burn everything down. Not yet. But enough to start a fire. And I knew one thing for sure, by the time I was done, he was going to burn with it. The first story hit the next morning. It wasn't about me. It was about him. Acclaimed director caught in another scandal. Anonymous sources claim his casting process is predatory. I nearly laughed when I saw it. Because I knew exactly who the anonymous source was. The starlet had talked. Not everything. Not yet. But just enough to plant the first seed of doubt. Enough to make the executives nervous. To make the investors pay attention. Hollywood is a machine that runs on fear. And if you can make the right people afraid, you can take down anyone. I sipped my coffee, watching the festival play out from my hotel balcony. This was far from over. I could feel it. And I was right. The real counterattack came that night. It wasn't another article. It wasn't a public scandal. It was a message. I had just finished getting ready for another party when there was a knock at my door. Room service. At least, that's what I thought. But when I opened the door, no one was there. Just a small, sleek black box sitting on the floor. No note. No label. I should have ignored it. Should have walked away. Instead, I picked it up. Brought it inside. And the second I lifted the lid, my blood ran cold. Inside, carefully laid on black velvet, was my script. The one for the role I had fought for. The one he had promised the starlet. The one that was supposed to be mine. Pages slashed through with red marker. Liar scrawled over the title page. Cancelled stamped across the final scene. And tucked neatly between the pages was a flash drive. I didn't touch it. Not right away. I just stared at it. Because I knew. I knew whatever was on that drive was meant to scare me. And for the first time since this started, I felt the tiniest whisper of something I didn't want to name. I grabbed my laptop, plugged it in. Only one file. A video. I pressed play. And my stomach dropped. It was me. Me, in a hotel suite, laughing, sipping wine, leaning too close to someone just outside the frame. A man's voice murmuring something low. My own voice giggling in response. And then, the camera angle shifted. The man's face came into view. Not him. Someone else. Someone married. Someone powerful enough that if this video got out, it wouldn't just ruin me, it would make sure I never worked again. I felt sick. Because I remembered that night. I remembered drinking, laughing, but nothing else. And now? Now it looked like I was caught in my own scandal. A perfectly crafted distraction. I closed the laptop, breathing hard. And then my phone buzzed. A text. From an unknown number. Careful where you step. You're not the only one who knows how to play dirty. The next morning, I met with the journalist again. This time, I wasn't the one holding the cards. I slid my phone across the table. Let her watch the video in silence. She sighed. How bad is it? I forced a smile. Bad enough. She hesitated. Do you remember it? No. That was the truth. And that was the problem. Because even though I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, I also knew it didn't matter. Hollywood doesn't care about the truth. It only cares about the story. And this? This was a great story. One designed to bury me. The journalist sighed, rubbing her temples. This isn't just him. This is bigger. Someone else is backing him. I went still. Who? She shook her head. I don't know yet. But I can find out. I swallowed. Then do it. She hesitated. What if you don't like the answer? I met her eyes. I don't care. That night, I went to another party. Not because I wanted to. Because I had to. If I disappeared now, the rumors would spread faster. The video would look more real. So I went. Dressed up. Smiled. Pretended like nothing was wrong. And when he walked in, I didn't even flinch. He spotted me immediately. Made his way over, slow, deliberate. Enjoy my gift? He murmured. I took a sip of my champagne. What gift? His lips twitched. Clever girl. I tilted my head. You're scared. He chuckled. Of you? I leaned in just enough to rattle him. No, I whispered. Of the truth. His smile froze. And for the first time, I saw something shift behind his eyes. A flicker of uncertainty. Good. Because this wasn't over. Not even close. The night of the premiere, the air was thick with anticipation. Glittering lights. Flashing cameras. The heartbeat of pulsing beneath my feet. It should have been his night. It was supposed to be his moment. Instead, it was about to be his downfall. I had spent the last 48 hours gathering every weapon I could. The journalist had come through. The starlet had come through. Even the wife of the married man from the video had come through. Because as it turned out, she knew it was fake before I did. He tried to use it against my husband, too. She had told me, voice tight with barely concealed rage. Said he'd make it go away, for a price. Her price? Me. My silence. But she had made her own choice. I want him gone, she whispered, gripping my wrist so hard it left a mark. For good. So we made a plan. Not just to fight back. Not just to survive. To end him. The red carpet was a battlefield. The press already had whispers of something brewing. I saw it in their eyes, the way they glanced at me, at him, at the executives who suddenly looked too stiff, too nervous. He hadn't seen it yet. Not really. He was still playing his role. The genius director. The untouchable king of the festival. He stood in the center of it all, smiling for the cameras, drinking in the attention like it belonged to him. Like it always had. And then the first bomb dropped. A journalist shouted a question. Loud. Clear. Any comments on the leaked casting tapes? The smile slipped. Just for a fraction of a second. Then boom. Another journalist. Another question. This time, about hush money. About coercion. About actresses coming forward. I watched his jaw tighten, his fingers twitch at his sides. And then, the video played. Not his video. Mine. Only this time, it wasn't the fake version. It was the unedited footage. The raw, ugly proof of how it had been manipulated. The married man's wife had made sure of that. A screen had been set up just outside the main theater. I had nothing to do with it, but I knew exactly who did. The starlet. The one he had used. The one he had thrown away. She stood near the entrance, arms crossed, chin high, watching as the footage rolled. The crowd shifted. The whispers turned to gasps. He turned to me, eyes dark with something I'd never seen before. Not anger. Not hatred. Fear. For the first time, real fear. You did this, he hissed. I didn't deny it. I didn't have to. Because the next video started playing. This one wasn't about me. It was about him. Actresses. Assistants. Colleagues. One by one, their voices spilled out across the courtyard. Stories. Testimonies. Secrets he had buried so deep he had thought they'd never crawl back up. But here they were. Clawing their way into the open. Dragging him down, piece by piece. People were turning away from him now. Executives whispering among themselves. Producers shaking their heads. Actors he had worked with, actors who had once worshipped him, watching in horrified silence. The illusion was breaking. And he knew it. So he did what cowards always do. He ran. Not dramatically. Not with some big speech or a desperate plea. He just turned and left. Into the crowd, into the festival, into irrelevance. The fallout was immediate. The studio pulled his contracts. His next film? Cancelled. His past films? Re-examined, dissected, picked apart by the same industry that had once worshipped him. Some tried to defend him. But not many. Because men like him? They only stay powerful as long as people pretend not to see. And now? Everyone saw. A week later, I sat on the beach, watching the waves roll in. The festival was over. My name was still in the news, but differently now. Not as a scandal. Not as a victim. As a survivor. As someone who had won. The starlet sat beside me, pulling her knees to her chest. You know he's still trying, right? I nodded. He'll keep trying. She hesitated. Are you scared? I thought about it. And then I smiled. No. Because for the first time in a long, long time, I was finally free.